Hello there everyone, how you doing today? I hope you're all well. Today we're reading There's Something Under My Bed on r/nosleep, written by probably Pisces. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below so the video does well. Do you remember all the things you were scared of when you were little? If you really look back on it, you'll probably remember a whole bunch of them. There were probably some silly ones like lava or quicksand. Probably some more rational ones too, like drowning or getting lost. And if I had to bet, you probably had some of the classics as well. Darkness, spiders, monsters under the bed. That last one was the worst for me. I remember many nights as a child where all I could do was wrap my blankets tightly around me and try to ignore the nagging feeling that something was lurking just below me. It never worked, of course. No matter how many times I told myself that my fear was irrational, that nothing could be down there, I wouldn't believe it. Even if my mom had checked for me as she was tucking me in, my brain would still tell me that something had been hiding from her when she'd looked. Or perhaps it had materialized after the fact. The only thing I knew for sure was that something was definitely waiting for me down there. Something with sharp claws and slavering fangs. Something that wanted to hurt me. Of course, this fear made sleep all but impossible. Every time my eyes would start to drift closed, I would hear little sounds. Nothing significant, just a gentle tap, a scratch or a shuffle in the darkness. But to a child's frightened mind, these sounds constituted proof of everything I had been afraid of. Every tiny sound was a sign. Every thump or click or creak, the noise of the terrible beast stirring, shifting, preparing to emerge and swallow me whole. These thoughts lessened as I grew older. After all, these fears were for babies, and anyone who still believed in monsters under the bed at the ripe old age of 10 was immature, a silly scaredy cat. But that's what my friends told me anyway. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get over my phobia completely. There was still a few nights a month where the fear would reawaken, and I would pull myself out of bed the next morning, bleary and exhausted, hoping for a miracle solution. That solution came when I was 13. My parents, giving in to my constant begging, had finally gotten me a phone. It was junky, having belonged to my grandma for a number of years before being passed down, and it had very limited capabilities, but it was mine. It was one day, while messing around with the stupid photo booth app, that I came up with the ingenious solution. Whenever I was scared that something was under my bed, I would simply take a photo of it. That way, if there was something down there, I would be able to see it and get help. But if there was nothing, which almost certainly was always the case, I would be able to put my mind at ease and go to sleep, comfortable in the knowledge that no boogeyman would jump out and get me if I did. This method worked wonders, night after night. When creeping suspicion would start to sneak into my tired brain, I would switch on the flash, reach my hand over the side of the bed, and snap a quick picture, all from the safety of my mattress. And when that picture inevitably turned up empty, my fears would be alleviated, and I would drift right off to sleep. Over the years, I eventually stopped having to take the pictures altogether. After all, I had seen dozens of empty photos, night after night after night. There had never once been anything to worry about in any of them. Finally, I'd come to accept all those little noises for what they really were. just noises. By the time I reached college, I no longer had to use the camera at all, which was probably for the best. After all, the habit would have been difficult to explain to my roommates. Since then, I've graduated college, started my career, and moved away from home. I have my very own house now in a nice suburban town, and though I live alone, I felt completely safe. I hadn't thought about my silly worries in almost a full decade, and everything seemed to be going well until tonight. About an hour ago, I jolted awake with a start. I thought I'd been having a nightmare, though at this point I'm not so sure. If it was a dream, it must have been terrifying, because I woke up with clammy skin and a racing pulse. Thankfully, as my eyes darted around my dark room, I felt my fear start to gradually ebb away. As I scanned every nook and cranny, seeing nothing, my body started to relax again. I adjusted my blankets and prepared to turn over and wheel myself back to sleep when I felt a nearly forgotten creeping terror start to bloom in my chest. For the first time in years, my mind once again started to wonder whether something could be under the bed. I tried and I tried to stop thinking about it, but there was no use. The leftover adrenaline from my sudden awakening fueled my anxiety, and soon I was starting to work myself up pretty badly. Every random noise startled me, just like when I was little, and if I focused intently enough on the silence, I could swear I heard shallow breathing. In a burst of petrified curiosity, I peeked down through the tiny sliver of darkness between my mattress and headboard, and just for a moment I thought I saw something shift. It was then, as I fought through my fried nerves and nausea, that I remembered my old trick. With shaking hands, I reached down to where my charging phone was resting on the floor beside my bed. As my fingers cleared the bottom of the bed frame, it was all I could do not to yank my hand back, as I imagined something curling its claws around my wrist. Trembling, I managed to flip my phone on its side so the screen faced the darkness under my bed. I never managed to take the photo. In a tiny fraction of a second, something happened that shocked me to my core. In an instant, all of my rationalizations flew out the window, and in a moment of panic, all I could think to do was to yank my phone and myself underneath the covers like a frightened child. I now know for certain that something is under my bed, and that no photo I take will help alleviate my terror. And what's worse, I also know what it looks like. See, unlike that first old phone I had, my current one is loaded with the latest technologies and updates. It can be opened in two different ways, as has always been the case. You can input a preset passcode, but for the average modern internet consumer, the process is tedious and difficult to do every time you want to open your phone. So as an alternative option, phone companies have introduced a much more convenient feature, Face ID. I'm typing this now from the safety of my mattress, though I don't know how much longer I have before whatever it is that's down there decides it's not going to abide by that arbitrary rule any longer. I don't know what it wants, but I'm certain that whatever it plans to do will not end well for me. I can't bear to make a run for it, because the second I turned that phone over to face the inky abyss and watch the little padlock at the top of the screen flip open, I knew for sure. There's something under my bed, and it looks just like me. Since that wasn't long enough for a proper video, we'll be sneaking another r/nosleep story into here. Hope you enjoy. Remember to like and subscribe and leave a comment with your thoughts on the stories. I believe this is the end. My name is Michael John Morsfield. I am now 79 at the time of writing this, and I believe this is the end. My life, like so many others, have had its ups and downs. Happiness, sadness, loyalty, betrayal, but most importantly it had love. For 43 amazing years I was graced by the presence of my dear Alma. Sure, she had her kinks, some of which I will not be sharing in this here letter. I hope you don't mind. Now, Alma had the kind of eyes you could drown in, almost literally at times. I had to stop myself from making myself look like a weird fella back when we were still strangers. But goddamn if you weren't left breathless when you looked. Sapphire blue with a sparkle that could blind a careless man. They started that way at least. Month after month, they slowly shifted. First, the entire iris turned sapphire blue. The rest of them followed suit. Scared us damn senseless. She could see like normal, nor did she claim to have any pain. Doctors didn't know, neither left or right, by the state of their faces. Now I'll be honest with you, I screamed in their faces that they had no business with patients if they didn't have any interest helping anyways. They kept claiming that everything seemed fine. I told him, the hell do you mean everything looks fine? She's blue all over. But no, eyes looked fine, no issues we didn't already know about. It took me a while to get over that. It makes you think you're insane. But you couldn't possibly be, since I had no real dreams or fantasies about it. Anyways, it started affecting her skin next. Small touches first. Just dark spots, subtle. These spots grew, then expanded. Slowly, for years, we returned to the doctors. Every week first, then every day. They told us to seek help at a calmer place where you can wind down and relax. But I know what I saw, and felt, and tasted. This was real. They don't teach you in school how to deal with a situation like this. Mentally, it was the second most traumatizing thing I've had to endure. So there's no way I could pretend to understand how it must have felt for her. She kept saying that she was okay. We rarely argued normally, but whenever I asked if there was anything to be done to help her at all, even if it was just a glass of water, she got real venomous out of nowhere, pushing every little button she knew she would hurt. We were both so sure that this would be the end for her. When over 80% of her body was covered in this dark shell, she couldn't move. She could barely talk at this point. I made the mistake of trying to lighten her mood. Gave her shell a good knocking, like I was a visitor at a door. The sound was wooden, almost like an actual door I was knocking on. I've never seen such sadness before. Sad is not a good word for it. Completely broken would be more a proper term for it. She asked me to move her to the guest room. Said she couldn't stand to look at me right then. When I walked into her the next day, it was too late. Every little part of her was covered now. Even her hair was covered in it. The love of my life, taken like that. The fact that the last thing I did to her was to give her the most excruciating mental pain she's ever had to endure. It haunts me. It drives me up the wall. And that's when the urges came. Because it looks so much like beef jerky, which I love, by the way. It is with the most horrific shame I tell you that maybe just a nibble is a thought that came to me on more than one occasion. She was always the most beautiful soul around, and I'm sure that it would be reflected in the taste. She was always so sweet, so I bit right into a piece of her arm, and that's when the screaming started. She screamed the most horrific screech I've ever heard. She barely sounded human anymore, but to be honest, that was not the biggest shock in that moment. When I bit into her, she tasted nothing like beef jerky. She was, first of all, extremely tough to pierce. and a definite world record holding for the largest living gusher. But instead of a fruit full of fruity, sugary goodness, you get a mouthful of bile. I don't think it was actually bile, but it tasted like it though. What flowed out of the hole I made was some pitch black, molasses thick fluid. It just kept pouring and pouring. To be honest, it was quite transfixing just to see how much fluid a person makes. I assumed the black liquid was all that was left of her. She was hollow inside. Nothing left of her besides that empty shell she resided in. The screams continued though, so she must be alive in there somehow. There are many things I could tell you, that it all ended peacefully somehow. That Alma got the rest she deserves and got to find the sweet embrace of God finally. This was a week ago, however, and her screams have not died down. Not one bit. Please believe me, I tried it all to make her stop. I spent the last 3 days slurping up the black tar that is Alma, just to throw it up again. But it needs to be in me. Then we'll never be separated, just like we've always wanted. My name is Michael Johns Morsfield, and I believe this is the end. If you can read this, I have taken shelter inside of her shell. The screams are not so loud in there. It is dark and tight, but I feel it getting a little bigger by the hour. I slurped you up. Now you will not spill. I love you, my dearest Alma. Thank you for watching today's video. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below with your thoughts on the stories, and how mental that man is. And maybe check out one of my other videos that the algorithm thinks you might enjoy. I will see you all next time. Hasta la pasta.